Yeah. I was a little excited to finally play the Sane Trilogy. Now, I don't describe games this way very often, but I am just happy that this collection exists. An HD remaster of Crash Bandicoot is something that everybody has been asking for years, back when the whole HD trilogies of like Ratchet, Sly, and Jack were the hot thing on PS3. But since Crash is owned by Activision, and Activision is... Yeah, we were kinda doubtful. But thanks to some rumors, fan outcry, and a little teasing here and there from Sony themselves, we finally got exactly what we wanted. Crash was also tossed into Skylanders, but hey, that's already in the past, and we at least got some pretty cool figures out of it. And actually, my copy of the game is still sealed. You may be wondering why. That's because I actually got a review code for the game. I've been playing it digitally instead. Thank you, Activision, for that. Why I went ahead and bought the game anyway? I just had to. I wanted the box. To say that I was ridiculously hyped to finally play this would really do my level of excitement no justice. But without any further ado, no more small talk here and there, let's finally dive in. Initially, Crash Bandicoot was brought to us by the fine folks at Naughty Dog, an amazing studio that brought us the likes of Way of the Warrior and Keith the Thief. That's what they were known for, right? But despite ND not being involved with this collection, luckily Vicarious Visions is at the helm, who were responsible for the not amazing but still pretty good Crash Bandicoot GBA games. Hey, it's better than nothing. But boy, they certainly had a whole lot of work ahead of them. They couldn't simply up-res the graphics and then boom, ship it. Don't get me wrong here, the original Crash trilogy are classics, but they definitely need some polishing up, especially Crash 1. So, two general things needed to be improved on with the Sane Trilogy as a whole: presentation and gameplay. And in short, ooh boy, they did it! What's interesting with Crash Bandicoot as a trilogy is each game is pretty drastically different from each other, so there's a lot to consider with each one. The first game starts off pretty simple. You progress from grasslands and rivers to mysterious bridges and factories, all to save your creepily curvy girlfriend. No amount of remastering is gonna make that any less weird. The second game, Cortex Strikes Back, introduces a warp room that allows the game to maintain the realistic vibes of the level themes, but does a whole lot more with it. You got snow areas, the sewers, you can ride a jet board, you even go into space! All of this to gather up crystals to, quote unquote, help Dr. Cortex save the world. Yeah, you're full of crap, Cortex. The name of the game already spoils your plan. And Crash 3 really just went crazy. Time travel is now involved. So now you travel to places like the prehistoric era, ancient Egypt, the Arabian Nights, and boy, there are vehicles aplenty. Riding a motorcycle in the 1950s, riding a little tiger on the Great Wall of China, shooting down blimps in a plane during World War I. It's ridiculous. They also gave Crash a bazooka. It's very confusing. I like it, it's just very confusing. All of this is done to gather up even more crystals to stop Cortex and the evil mask Uka Uka from taking over the world. Basically, there is a whole lot of different stuff going on in each game that had to not only be maintained, but also updated to attempt to please fans, new and old. And prepare yourself, I am probably going to be fanboying all over this quite a lot. Immediately upon starting any of the games up, the opening cutscenes are perfect. To say the animations have been improved upon would really be underselling just how good they look. The voice acting is top-notch too, bringing back familiar voice actors from more recent games that recite the original lines word for word. As someone who has played through the originals dozens of times, it just made me really happy seeing these classic scenes upgraded to this level. There are even some new details here and there, such as Tawna actually fighting back, rather than just sort of standing there awkwardly. Something she did a lot of back in the day. Oh, hey, look at that, Nathan Drake. Neat. And I also gotta say, Coco is absolutely adorable.
My battery is fried. Make yourself useful, big brother, and bring an extra battery for me.
Oh my god, I love you. Also, she was totally watching Uncharted. She has good taste. And hey, speaking of, you can actually play as Coco throughout most of the 3 games too. That's right, get your own stinking laptop battery! She plays exactly the same, but still, it's pretty cool. And it actually makes sense in the canon. She's actually traveling back through time through the Time Twister machine to help her brother out on his adventures. Oh man, she is the greatest. Now for those of you who are unfamiliar, themes aside, gameplay is very similar in concept throughout all 3 games. You got a bunch of linear hallway-like levels that play out from either behind or from the side, with the occasional mid-level backtracking, which, yes, is just about as annoying as it was back in the day. It really doesn't matter what you do to it, pissing it away will continue to be the bane of my existence. Also, yes, haha, pissing it away. Whether or not that level of authenticity is a good or bad thing is entirely up to you. I am honestly totally fine with it since I'm used to the classics, but some newcomers may have a rough time. It's not as difficult as, say, Dark Souls, but really, what is? And graphically, the games are now gorgeous, presented to us in glorious 4K resolution. God, I hate that so much. There are so many different landscapes throughout all 3 adventures, and they really pop out a whole lot more than before. And a really neat new touch, levels with similar themes will typically end up looking slightly different now, meaning each stage also does a better job of standing out. Turtle Woods being rainy and the pits being sunny is a perfect example. Although a few of the enemies do look a little off in comparison with the original, like the penguins here, they kinda just look better in the originals, and these birds, they just look weird. But really, that's the best I got in terms of looking worse. The soundtracks have also been faithfully remastered. While the original composer, Josh Mansell, didn't return, the tunes overall still sound great. And again, in terms of the first game needing improvements, some of the songs in the original were mostly ambience for something like Slippery Climb, but now it has a much more prominent melody, making for a much better track. It's just good stuff all around. And I can also say with confidence that, while not 100% accurate, Crash controls just like he did back in the day, and even a little bit smoother. To be fair, it may be that the game just does a bit of a better job with visual cues, but Crash 1 is nowhere near as difficult as the PS1 version. Don't get me wrong though, still hard. Like the same goes for the hog levels. Between the smoother controls and the sharper visuals, these felt a lot easier too. One of the most obvious problems with the original Crash 1 was needing to basically perfect every single level, breaking all of the crates without dying at all to get the gems. Luckily, you can now die as many times as you please. Oh my god, thank you! Although you do actually need to do some levels without dying to get the special color gems, which is a nice compromise, until you remember that Slippery Climb is one of those levels. Oh boy. And oh man, I love this. Crash's stupid victory cry is back, and it's just as dumb as ever. It's so good.
Crash is back, folks. There has never been a better time to be alive on this sweet, sweet, sweet green planet of ours, Earth.
And speaking of Slippery Climb, there's actually going to be DLC for Crash 1 that supposedly contains Stormy Ascent, which was a removed level from the original Crash 1, which is just a harder version of Slippery Climb, a level that's already considered to be one of the hardest in the game. Aren't you excited? I am. Time trials were added to the first 2 games as well. In Crash 3, they were already there, and actually required to get access to the last few levels, and while they still are, the ones in the first 2 are totally optional. They even added the speed shoes from Crash 3 into 2, and it totally fits. Crash 1's design is so restricted that I'm fine with just sticking to my natural speed. Except when you're trying to get all the platinum relics, and then the platinum relic in the lab, you have to do some insane frame perfect movements. Oh my god, what were they thinking? Still got every single platinum relic though. Now, I don't mean to brag. Yes, I do. Crash Bandicoot 1 definitely needed the most changes out of all 3 games. Just the fact that you can now save between every level as opposed to every couple of levels, maybe, is a huge improvement. Some stuff, however, simply couldn't be saved if they were truly sticking to a one-to-one recreation. The game's pacing is just off. Some levels are long, some levels are short, some are really hard, the next one may be really easy, and all of this is seemingly happening at random. The adventure doesn't necessarily ramp up in difficulty just shows up whenever it wants. But hey, that's how the original was. That being said though, I still had a blast being able to play through this game without the constant fear of dying. Combined with the much tighter controls, even Slippery Climb, which I joke about, was a much more enjoyable time. I always really loved the very natural feeling of the game's worlds, as opposed to the over-the-top extravagance you would expect in a 3D platformer. And with the beautiful new graphics, I gotta tell ya, I kinda was in heaven. But going back to the issue of pacing, the bosses remain pretty easy and not all that interesting. But man, bless Vicarious Visions, they certainly tried. Papu Papu now has 5 hit points as opposed to 3. Ooh. And done. Ripper Roo's iconic laugh is gone too, which is super disappointing. His current one is okay, but come on, you can't top the classic. And I don't care what anyone says, the skinny legs on Koala Kong still weird me out. Good God, man, do not skip leg day. Bottom line though, nitpicks aside, this is the definitive version of Crash 1. That's right, I said it. Though admittedly, it really wouldn't take much to make Crash 1 better. But hey, at least they did it. That's awesome. As for Crash 2, Cortex Strikes Back, aka the best one, all that really needed to be done was put on a fresh coat of paint. That's really it. The level designs are still really fun. And with Crash's new moveset like a nice slide jump, simply traversing the levels is a lot more enjoyable. The adventure follows the same natural feeling environments of before, but with a nice much needed dose of variety. Such as controlling a jetboard, riding a polar bear, and there's even a jetpack. The game still maintains the core hallway design with all of these different gimmicks, without ever feeling overbearing. Polar does feel a bit off compared to the original, but I wouldn't really say worse, just slightly different. Also, holy crap, the new giant polar bear is absolutely terrifying, get it away from me! The game also introduced a lot more personality, with little cutscenes that'll pop up from time to time in the warp room, and with all of the new animations, I can watch Cortex lie through his teeth all day, he looks damn good doing it. And also Coco shows up every now and then, and she is just, again, she's just really precious. The room could be a bit darker though, the atmosphere was still better in the original. Come on there, Vicarious Visions. The bosses are really cool too. Shout out to Tiny Tiger for being cool looking and not...
I'm just trying to do my job, and you go and cause all this chaos.
That, and oh man, something I was really hoping they would do. Crash now properly tosses Wumper Fruit at Engine instead of them just materializing. I take it back, Vicarious Visions. Good on you guys. And wow, they even made the final boss better too. Cortex went down far too quickly in the original. Now it takes a lot longer, and this is totally awesome. They actually gave a reason as to why you're chasing him in the first place. I totally forgot that Cortex had a crystal before the adventure even started, so instead of just flying away, he's making his way back to his ship with that one crystal in hand, and I really love that detail. Man, you guys, Crash 2 is just really, really good. In terms of what needed improving, the same kinda goes for Crash 3. Warp! Oh my god, how does he do it? Just take the original, make it pretty, that's it. I will say though, after playing all 3 games back to back, which is something I haven't done in quite a while, Crash 3, I actually like a little bit less than I thought I did. I honestly think the adventure goes for far too much variety now. And while some of it is certainly enjoyable, some of it is just okay. The water levels kinda stink. Dealing with the other racers can still be super frustrating when you're aiming for first place, and the plane gameplay is just sorta there. And actually, this is kinda bizarre, the jet ski levels are the only thing in the entire collection that end up feeling worse. It's really weird, every other gameplay style feels totally fine, but the jet ski simply has looser controls, and when compared side to side with the original, you can see just how slow you turn in comparison. Did they not notice that? I got used to them in time, so they're definitely not bad, but the original definitely did it better. None of this stuff is outright terrible, but Crash definitely shines the brightest in its core platforming, and I just wish there was more of that here. The bosses remain pretty cool too. Tiny Tiger looking as sweet as ever, Entropy still looks fairly menacing, and the fight against Engine is actually super cool now, but come on, you already know, my man Dingo Dial is still the king. He doesn't say his post-loss line about warning Crash on the rest of his adventure, which does kinda stink, but really, everything else is great. Ultimately, I still do love Crash 3, just not as much as the polished Crash 2, and even the improved Crash 1. And just like the original, I absolutely love these enemies in particular. He tries his hardest to get to you, but you just simply pass by his obstacles and he's like, oh no, he's totally gonna spin into me, isn't he? I still have a whole life ahead of me. Please just tell my wife that I love her. So I may not like Crash 3 as much as I used to, or as much as some of you guys out there may still do. But that really doesn't matter, the game is still awesome, and really, bottom line, Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy is fantastic. It is exactly what we've been asking for what feels like forever. A better and prettier Crash 1, a prettier Crash 2, and a prettier Crash 3. I am just so happy that this is finally a thing. These 3 games are certainly relics of time, but remember, this is a series that started before 3D platformers were really a huge deal and developers really knew how to make them, and it managed to still properly compete with Mario for a short time.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
Crash Bandicoot has a place in history. These games deserved a modern day spotlight, and while the original versions will continue to be a huge part of my childhood, Sane Trilogy is now the way to go to play some good old classic Crash. Also, can't forget about this guy, Fake Crash is here as well. Look at this majestic fool. So, like many of you out there, I am very hopeful now for Crash's future. I think it's safe to say that maybe a new Crash racing game is somewhere down the pipeline. They've been harassed about this, so I'm sure it's gonna happen. It's just a matter of time. And hey, you developers, you're not gonna get past me on this. Oh, hey, look at this in the credits. Oh, no bandicoots were harmed, huh? Huh, that seems awfully familiar. That seems like Spyro the Dragon, where they had the whole no sheep were harmed thing. Now give us Spyro the Dragon. Alright, get the camera up, let me do the dance. Are you happy now?